All right, everybody, welcome back to our second installment of Coffee with Coaches. Got all of us have our Dunkin' Donuts stuff. Dunkin', our sponsor, they were all happy to send us some things to our coaches. I know, Ange, you're up in Maine, so your package is waiting for you in Western Mass, but you got some good stuff here. We brewed some of the Keurig Dunkins that they sent us today, and I've got it a little bit in my mug, and I know you guys do as well. Thanks to our sponsor, Dunkin' Donuts, for sponsoring Coffee with Coaches, a concept we came up with just a couple weeks ago. Again, our second installment. Today we've got our men's ice hockey coach, Greg Carville, here with us, our rowing coach, Eric Karsich, and Ange McMahon, our women's lacrosse coach. I'm going to start with you, Ange. You were 4-1 going into the year and going into the break here that we've had, and excited. You had some great early season wins over Boston College and Ohio State and UConn, and ranked in the top 20. Had some momentum headed into the A-10 part of the season, and you'd be headed, I think, to Richmond today, ready to play BCU in Richmond on the weekend. Tell us about, the first 5 games and what you were looking forward to when we had to stop everything a couple weeks ago.
Just overall the team chemistry and cohesiveness, and the way that through the season your team just builds and comes together and gets better every day. I think that everybody felt that energy and momentum. And I just, every day showing up with everybody committed and excited on preparing and getting better. And we were about to go to Towson University 2 days after the season got canceled. And that would be the first time we've ever played Towson, who's typically a annual top 20 team, and would have been a good test for us. So I think, just having a challenging schedule for us this year was really exciting, and just starting off with a bang and beating BC, who is number 5 at the commitment level, and just showing up and having fun.
We lost Ange for a little bit there, having some internet troubles. Eric, you were just about to head to Clemson for your spring break and kind of your training trip to get you ready for the spring. Your first spring back at your alma mater, named you our head coach last summer, and I know you've hit the ground running and gotten our women ready to go for the spring season. Tell us, the day before you're about to leave and we had to make the call. Obviously now looking at it, the right call, but I know you had a group of really disappointed women that they didn't get a chance to get out on the water for the last month and a half, 2 months this spring season. Tell us a little bit about that transition and what you were looking forward to this fall or this spring.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to come back. Similar to what Andrew was talking about, we were feeling this pretty nice momentum with every school that I've taken over, whether GW, Cornell, now here at UMass. You have different challenges that you work through. And, each school took a little bit a different timeline to get that chemistry and that energy. And we really felt like this last month, we started to figure out the right formula here at UMass. So really coming up, it was Friday the 13th, this ironic day when we had our breakfast, meeting with the team, and we said our goodbyes. That was the day that, our trailer would have been down in Clemson, South Carolina. That was a tough blow for the team and for the coaching staff, just because we did feel like we had that good momentum. But at the same time, we surely have perspective. I have to commend my team in the way they handle it. They have perspective of the global impact of this pandemic and kind of outside the walls of UMass, which is sometimes difficult for the athlete that really kind of has the blinders on and is locked into the season, just like Ange and I were spearheaded towards that. For us, May 16th date, it's tough to have that perspective of what's going on around outside the walls of UMass. But team did a really great job of handling it, and I commend them for that. Really missing those. We would have, today we would have been in our, through 2 races, preparing for our 3rd spring race. It's a blow, but we're doing the best we can right now to stay connected, through this, very unique situation that we're in right now.
Yeah, sure. And Carv, you were in a little bit different position. You had gone through a full regular season. I think all of us were particularly disappointed for you and your program because of, I think, how well we had matured during the course of the year. You were finally healthy for the most part. Now, you had a number of kids out for the year, but you got Mitch Chafee back in that last week. I think we were ready and primed to make a really nice postseason run through Hockey East and the NCAAs. A day before we start the quarterfinal series against Northeastern, and we had to call it. What were you excited about as we went into the postseason run there in March?
Precisely what you said. I think the fact that we had the NCAA run and the Boston Garden last year and we lost to BC in that first game, and I think you have to lose in the Garden and you have to lose in the playoffs. So down the road, you have that experience to work off of, and I think our group was excited. The hard part is you work all year to get to this spot. Like, we're on the precipice of the playoffs. That was the frustrating part. Like you said, we just got Mitchell Chafee back. He's an All-American player. John Leonard was the hottest player in the country. Jake McLaughlin, who ended up signing with Las Vegas. I was excited for the playoffs, the NCAA, for the exposure for those kids. Like, John Leonard was nowhere in the Hobie Baker conversation at Christmas. And by the end of the year, he was easily top 10. He was really close to being a top 3 finalist. And if we could have had more games, I mean, he was scoring multiple goals almost every game. It would have really helped his cause. And to think that we could have possibly had back-to-back Hobie Baker winners is not something you even dream about. And the other thing is, our program had only made the NCAA tournament one time in 30 years or however long before we got here. And this was going to be a second year in a row. And we had guaranteed that we were 100% an NCAA team. And so that part's really hard when you have history that kind of is taken away from you. But I think this group, we did our end of the year one-on-one meetings with our players last week through Zoom, and almost to a man, it was the same thing. Like, this group was ready. Everything was coming together. And, we were 60 Division I hockey teams, and there's probably half of them have the resources where that they can legitimately be a national champion. And then it's really tough to be a top 10 team, no matter how much money you put in, how good your players are. Like, so many things have to come together. And we felt like again, had a team that had a chance to take a kick at the can, because it's hard to get there. There's so much competition. And so, again, it's a big lost opportunity for those kids.
Sure. Get that new mass T-shirt rolling today. I like that.
Yeah. Well, the funny story, we changed in the men's old men's basketball locker room, and I was in there about a month ago, and I was looking for something in my hockey ops guy's stall, and I opened it up, and I'm like, that's a pretty nice T-shirt. New mass. Who came up with that term? And I think I'm going to take that from my hockey ops guy. He had a couple new ones in there. I don't know why he wasn't sharing them, but I said, I think I earned it, so I took it.
That's good. I like that. Well, you speaking of that, this senior group was your first full 4-year class that you had, and at the end of your 4 years, I know how important this class was to you, Suits and Jake and Nico. Talk a little bit just about their contributions and how they really built up NewMass, because that group personified what you've tried to instill in this program. And I want to give those three a particular shout out. A lot of their contributions were unheralded, but nonetheless so important to the maturity of our program.
Yeah, when the program's going through transition, there's attrition that takes place, and to get through 4 years, that says a lot. And those three kids are really high character kids. They're all, Nico and Jack are almost 4.0 students. Jake McLaughlin, he came into school. We were a little concerned about him academically. He did unbelievable. So they're really, really good kids. Jake McLaughlin and Jack Suter were secondary players for, good portion of their careers, and they took huge steps this year, and we wouldn't have had a chance if Jack Suter didn't have the year that he had. He went from probably our fourth line center at the beginning of the year to our first line center, and Jake McLaughlin became one of the best defensemen in the league, and he was third team all league. So you need kids like that stepping up. And Nico Hildenbrand was a 2-year captain. That's, pretty rare. He captained 2 NCAA teams. That's something that he'll always carry with him. They're 3 kids that our university will be very, very proud of. They're going to do really well in life. Just tremendous kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric and Ange, you guys have senior groups, and I know we're ready to lead you this spring. We got the news from the NCAA last week that we're able to reinstate the eligibility for all of our spring sport athletes that had started the season. Eric, your group gets their season back because they hadn't started yet. But that means bringing back, giving the opportunity to bring back some seniors into next year's group. The NCAA has allowed us to do that, will allow us to go over our scholarship limits to be able to do that. Tell me how important that was for you all and what you've been able to build. And your program obviously is at a different point than our rowing program is right now. You've had a tremendous amount of success the last 10 years. But I know this senior group was not only from a production standpoint an important group for you, but also from a leadership standpoint. Talk about, why don't you start just with that group and kind of the status on them coming back and what your thoughts are on that decision from the NCAA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think as you're looking through development, just, everything about their experience was just helping them grow and gain confidence and also really just figure out, their next step in life. So when they're going through that process and it just got cut off, I mean, I think the general sentiment this whole time is just a sense of really unfinished business on all fronts, academically, socially, athletically, and just really the connection with their teammates. They just felt like they weren't done yet. And, there's really strong interest from all 4 of them because 2 already had extra years of eligibility. So they were already coming. So came down to 4. And, they just feel really passionate about wanting to come back and, just not only contributing to our team in a leadership and on the field roles, but also just, figuring out what their next step in life is and giving themselves a little bit of time with all this uncertainty that's going on right now. It's really hard to plan for the future. So to know that they have a home in UMass and with our lacrosse program and can continue to develop their leadership, and just cultivate those skills that are going to enhance their marketability as they go into the workforce. I think it's just going to be a really helpful year for them. So, we're just extremely grateful that the NCAA allowed them to have that opportunity and B, that UMass is supporting them to be able to come back, and we support them as well. And we're just sort of working through the details and what it all looks like right now, but we're really fortunate that I think we'll have probably the bulk of them returning and helping our program next year.
Yeah. Eric, what does it mean for your group?
It's similar to what Greg was talking about, where transition is hard. This group of seniors, 9 women, I really will say that in blind faith, they believed in what we were doing. It took time. We spent the first semester really getting to know one another as a unit, coaching staff to team. And so really only the second semester did we fully understand what the expectations were. So for me, to have the opportunity to bring some of these athletes back, which, thank you to the NCAA. I feel like they did the right thing for these athletes, and they served them well. And it's fantastic that we're getting the support that we need from the university and the department to help give some of these seniors the opportunity to come back. To have them the whole year next year without having that timeline of getting to know one another is really going to be huge for us. That's going to be foundational leadership in our program, that they fully understand what our expectations are. The 9 recruits that are coming in this fall are going to have the senior leadership, some of them that they saw when they were here this fall on official visits. So they're really excited to know that some of those seniors are going to be here, at the end of August when they arrive, leading the team. And so for us, it's going to be a huge catalyst for us in our development as we build out these programs, as we bring in these 9 women next fall, mentor them, and have this leadership at the top. It's for us as a staff, it was the best news of all the news we've been hearing that has been not so great. It was fantastic news to know that this is the direction we're heading, and we could start building out 2020, 2021 plans.
So I'm going to ask each of you to talk maybe at the end just about your 2020 classes, as our fans want to know what's coming in for future Minutemen, Minutewomen to your programs. I want you to highlight some of the positives with the incoming class. Ange and Eric, I wanted to circle back with you again and just talk through this decision from the NCAA. It's not just really a one-year decision, because you've got all of these classes now get a year back. And you two are in equivalency sports, which means you can break up your scholarships into different amounts, different percentages for each of your kids. What does that do? How do you plan? I don't think people fully understand how much goes into planning for future years and how you're going to build your classes. And Carvey's nodding because Carvey's used to it. He's had to do this, and Carvey's in a different spot where he's got kids leaving his program to go pro, and we don't always know when that's going to happen if they develop the right way like he's been able to do. And Carv, I'm going to ask you too, circle back with you third, but just talk about what this means in terms of how do you get your mind wrapped around the current sophomore that now has 3 years of eligibility still remaining and may be a productive member of your program, and you've got to start now accounting for that as you recruit the 21 and 22 and 23 classes. Have you been able to get your mind around that and sort of start planning for it? Ange, I'll start with you.
I've started thinking about it, and some in our exit meetings that we had as everyone's leaving, it did come up in some of the conversations. And again, I think there is a little bit of uncertainty, like, as a sophomore in college, you might not be thinking about, what your life is going to be like 3 years from then. But I think just the general interest, some kids might not be interested in returning and want to, start careers or, maybe travel, or, we've seen some pretty, exceptional players that are seniors currently that have chosen not to pursue their extra year. And, I think it's just, comes down to the individual and having a lot of conversations and making sure that it's the right fit for them. But, we do have a really talented underclassmen on our roster, and, just from top to bottom, players that were making big contributions for us, juniors, freshmen, sophomores, all of them. So I think it's really just being adaptable, because then there's the transfer portal. That is probably the busiest website I've seen of late, and the amount of just amazing caliber players that are popping up in the transfer portal right now. We're just kind of taking it day by day right now, but also, not being too rash in any decisions that may affect our future and our ability to either bring back our own players or bring in, a standout player that could be a transfer. So we're just having a lot of conversations, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's our recruiting model is it has to be the right fit, no matter what. Whether it's our own recruits, transfers, and even returners, it really has to be the right fit. Because if it's not, and if it's going to affect the team culture, the team chemistry, then it's probably not going to be something that we pursue. We really want people that are going to make positive contributions, not only to our team, but just to the UMass community, and just be really good human beings and good people. So in this time right now where everything is electronic and virtual, it can be a little challenging to really figure that out. So just really trying to not jump to any quick decisions and making sure we're really getting to know these kids as best we can.
Sure. Eric, how about you? How are you guys managing some of this equivalency in the scholarship ranks for the next 2 or 3 years?
I think it adds a whole another layer of complexity to the puzzle. You not only have your front end equivalency, figuring out what you can bring in, but then you have on the backside how to balance it. And for us, we're trying to be proactive with it, having conversations in our daily Zooms with our coaching staff, just talking about who's on our roster and who would we target to stay for that 5th year. Is like Andrew was saying, it's fluid. We don't really know, whether to go to graduate school, travel, take a year off, have a job lined up, whatever it is. We don't know, but to be able to target them earlier than later and say, hey, this is something that we'd be interested in as far as a 5th year option, getting in front of our academic services, our academic center, and coming up with a plan with those targeted athletes. And it might change. They might look like an athlete freshman year. We're a physiology sport where things change over the years. We're not quite a skill sport like my fellow colleagues here. Things change over their time here. And so maybe it looks like that might be an athlete I want to keep as a freshman for another additional, but by the time they are junior, might not be a great fit at that time. So it is fluid, but we're trying to be proactive in having some of these conversations early so that we can get them at least thinking about, hey, this is an option for you when you get to the backside of your 4-year degree.
Sure. No, that's good. Carv, you have to, in your sport, and especially with all the success we've had, you've had now a number of guys sign pro NHL contracts. We just had 2 guys that we anticipated might go, and John Leonard and Mitch Chafee, and sure enough, they did sign. And so you have to, pivoting for you in the middle of your postseason is not a surprise. It's not a new trend. Tell us how you manage that and what you look for in terms of bringing in that next class and how you're managing those equivalent scholarships in hockey.
Sure. First, I'll say I know there's discussion about giving the winter sports an additional year, and I was actually relieved when that didn't pass, because to me it's a trickle-down effect. Like, somebody was going to feel the pain, and if they did it with hockey, that means our freshmen come in next year and they're not playing and they're not developing. So our guys played 95% of their season. They're ready to go on. Hockey players too come in older. A lot of these kids are 24 years older. They should be moving on in life. And so I'm glad that they didn't. Now, you talked about, we've had 4 players leave early in the last 2 years. The only one we didn't expect was Mario Ferraro last year. We thought he would stay another year, but the other 3 we had worked into our recruiting philosophy and plans. And we're a sport, again, where kids come in later and teams basically, it's a bit of stockpiling. You don't tell kids when they're coming in. They commit to the school, and part of it is when we need you, but part of it, you need to be ready. Like, the most important thing for us is to make sure a kid is, when he gets to campus, he's ready to help us be better and compete. So sometimes you have to rush kids. Sometimes kids come in earlier than you expected. Bobby Trevino is an example. We thought he needed another year at junior. He went to USHL his first year. He had 50 points. He came into us his first year, had 30 points. Like, those are crazy numbers for a kid who's 5'8". So we're very fluid in recruiting. You kind of stockpile, see what your needs are, see who's ready, and the players understand that. It's just the way that the nature of our sport and recruiting in ice hockey.
Well, you talk about that. You've highlighted now that recruiting class you had 3 years ago, which was number 2 in the country, and it's easy to see why they were number 2 in the country. In fact, looking back now, I could make an argument they were probably the best recruiting class in the country. You got 4 guys there that signed NHL deals that are going to play NHL minutes if they can get the season started again this year, but certainly next year. An unbelievable class of guys, and I don't know that we'll see another one like that again. God bless. I hope we do, because that'll mean some success in the future. But when you bring guys in, you've highlighted a couple guys that you've had to bring in maybe early and allow them to grow. And I want to go through each of your programs. Greg, I'll start with you. What can we look forward to? We had a question from one of our fans just asking about your group that's coming in next year, the new faces we're going to see in 2020, 2021. Talk a little bit about not only the first-year student athletes, but if you have any grad transfers or anybody else that might be coming in added to the roster.
Sure. So that class you were just talking about, our first recruiting class, I think we had 13 kids in that class. And as you said, 4 of them signed NHL contracts. I think Matt Murray will be a senior, and he may sign an NHL. Jake Gaudette may sign. So there's still more kids that may sign NHL contracts. The next class, I think, was 9, and now we're getting down to this year's class. Right now we have 5 kids who signed NLIs, all coming from the USHL. We have 3 centers and 2 defensemen. Center was the area this year where we were a little weak. So we have good support coming there. But we're pretty sure we'll have a grad transfer too, which is really, those guys are, if you can get a grad transfer, you're getting somebody who's a seasoned player who you want to come. And Jake Pritchard was a grad transfer that came from St. Lawrence. It was on our team last year. He had 49 points. He was second team all conference, signed with the Carolina Hurricanes. So we've got another grad transfer that we're pretty close on that we're really excited. And when we got Jacob Pritchard, and we knew we had a good team coming back, but he was that magical piece that really took us to another level. And the kid that we're talking to, or we expect to come, is going to have a huge impact as well.
Good. That's excellent. Eric, how about you? The group that you got coming in, what'd you say, nine women coming in?
And 9 women from all over, a little bit more of a national group, a little bit less kind of New England centric, I would say, than what we've had in former years. Some of the metrics that we utilize, athleticism, a lot of multi-sport athletes we brought in. I have a kid, captain of the soccer team in the fall, captain of the hockey team in the winter, and captain of the rowing team in the spring. Like that really kind of embodies what we're searching for. And we have a basketball player from down in Jersey. Has only been rowing for about a year. 6'1" kid, fastest kid in this class coming in. Greatest physiological potential out of this group. We really looked for and searched out athletes that do the right things when no one's watching. And one of the things we talked about a lot is get in front of their coaches. If they play basketball, talk to the basketball coach, talk to their hockey coach. Find out what these athletes show up. What's their show up shape? What day one, what do they look like? What kind of shape are they in? Because those are the athletes that we want in our program, and we've prioritized that, knowing that in our sport and in many sports, there's a lot of time when the coaches are not watching. Right now, for example, we're in this 6-week cycle in our run up to what would have been the A-10 championships, and they're home alone, in their erg cave in the basement, hopefully doing the right things when no one's watching. And it's interesting. I'm spinning this a little bit, on the recruiting side as an advantage in a lot of ways, because the high school recruits that we're talking to, juniors right now, they're not being told what to do every day. At least they're not being watched every single day. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of filtering out, for me, the athletes that I want here at UMass versus the athletes that only do the right things because the coach is right there watching them. And so it's how we're looking at things from a staff. But this group of 9 women that arrived this fall, we're actually working on a coxswain, actually 2 coxswains. It's going to round it out to 11 that will be arriving. There'll be a huge impact. The good news is we were able to establish a really good culture here. As I talked about before, we're headed in a really good direction. So we feel like the platform that they're arriving to is sound, it's solid, and they're going to be able to be mentored and assimilated very quickly. But really excited about this group of women that want to be a part of a family. We talk about that all the time. You leave your family at home, you arrive at your new family here at UMass. And so this group is very much into thinking about what can they do for the team rather than what can the team do for them.
Sure.
And so you'll meet many of them this fall. Super excited to have them on campus.
Good. And you've I know you talked about fit for any incoming class that you have. You've got a group of of women coming new year first year students. How do they sort of fit, and how do they meet some of the needs that you have as a program?
This class is pretty interesting because it's actually the first class that fell into the new recruiting legislation, which both men's and women's lacrosse adopted, which said that you cannot start recruiting until the beginning of junior year, September 1 of junior year. Lacrosse had really trended towards that early recruiting for a long time, and kids were making verbal commitments as early as 8th grade. And I think that it was a huge detriment not only to the kids, but also to the programs because of how many things could change in that time, and the level of development that you see in those later years of high school that, we were making decisions sometimes where we didn't really truly know what that player was going to look like maybe 4 years later once they finally got to college. So this is our first class that, we recruited juniors, and I think just seeing them develop, we have a decent amount of New Yorkers in that mix. Half the class, it's 8 total, half the class is from New York, all really strong areas that, we're making state championship runs over these past couple of years. So I think we'll see a couple of those make pretty strong contributions. I think New York is one of the strongest states historically in lacrosse, and just players that we've had coming from those areas. We have a couple from Albany area, some from Long Island, have always, really stepped up and been ready to contribute right away. And then there's always a level of development. Lacrosse is still a young sport. It's not necessarily quite national yet. It's gaining in popularity. I think it's the fastest growing sport right now in the country. But, we'll still have a couple players that need a little bit of time to develop. And I think our coaching staff does a really great job of that. And then we have a couple kids that I think will make impacts right away.
That's good. I want to give a shout out again to Dunkin', our sponsor for Coffee with Coaches, awesome sponsor of ours. The Dunkin' on University Drive, I'm told, is still open, and anyone would tell you Dunkin's an essential business in the state of Massachusetts, especially. So Dunkin' is open. Go through the drive-through and grab some Dunkin' donuts. They were nice enough to give us mugs and some coffee today, so our coaches are well stocked for this quarantine period. I want to take a couple questions from our fans. I'm going to read off of Twitter. Sent this out an hour ago and already have 10 or 12 questions. Want to ask you guys, Joel Southall asks, how is the school athletic department handling academics while everybody is at home? How has that worked out so far? And do you think going through this will make it easier in the long run for students to do distance learning while traveling for sports? I'll just say as an overarching sort of thought, the remote learning has kind of shifted our academic success unit, and they've done a fantastic job of staying connected with our student athletes, as have our coaches. I want to talk to each of you, just maybe give me 30 seconds each on what you've done to stay connected to our student athletes and make sure that you're promoting the academic piece and finishing out the semester strong. Greg?
Well, like I said, last week we spent a lot of time. We had one-on-one, probably half-hour talks with each player in our team. So that was part of the discussion. And just watching, I have a 15 and 13 and a 7-year-old, and they're all learning remotely. So if they can handle it, I'm sure our players are getting they're getting their education taken care of.
Good. Eric?
I think this whole move of going on with online learning has definitely destigmatized the culture of online learning, where before it was kind of the oddball kind of direction in a way. Now it's happening everywhere. We're doing weekly full team Zoom calls with our squad every other week, and then mixing in their class Zoom, so they get a little bit more of an intimate setting. 9 to 10 women, we're talking to them weekly. They're obviously working with our academic services. Lance does a great job having open hours, and so I think we have a really great academic group. And so I don't see them having that many struggles this spring. Obviously, change is hard, so that's why we're trying to communicate with them as much as possible and work and get them through, over this hump and into a comfortable place so they're able to finish this semester out very well.
I just realized the first two people to answer this question are our two highest team GPAs for male and female over the last year, ice hockey and rowing. So I think you're certainly, your programs are well equipped, and yours is not far behind. You've got a great group of talented women that get it done in the classroom as well. What have you seen? How are you staying connected, and what are they doing to work through this time from an academic standpoint?
Yeah, we've been doing weekly team Zooms as well, and individual check-ins. Our staff sort of divide up the team, and then we're sort of rotating week to week on who we check in with. And I think the biggest thing, for them, they're all pretty motivated and on top of it. Their organizational skills are tremendous. I think what we noticed in that first week that they were really lacking was just that social connection. So we actually divided the team up in groups, and we started having competitions amongst the group in a lot of different ways, just fun things. So, competitions making TikTok videos, or picking your favorite motivational quote, or just different things that has sort of got them to re-engage with each other and built that camaraderie and that level of challenging and competition flavor that they were so accustomed to, and then it just sort of got ripped away. So they've been having a lot of fun with that, and they post all their videos to social media, and we're just trying to, I think when we're together, try to keep it light and fun, but also engaging as well. We're trying to keep things positive. I mean, there's not a lot of positive things out there right now, so we're trying to pull positive news in. And in our last team Zoom, every team had to come in with some type of positive news story or positive group that was making a really good contribution to our country or to the world right now. And they came with some great stuff. And a lot of them also participated in a virtual 5K for the Headstrong Foundation the other day for cancer. So we're just trying to find different ways that we can stay socially connected, but also finding ways to really engage in the community and make positive contributions that way.
That's good. I like that. I don't think there's any, just to that end, I don't think there's any generation that is better equipped to use this and iPads and computers and do remote learning. There's no doubt, as long as we can give them a good balance of what they do on social media and the academic piece, they tend to have a lot of success. Eric, this question comes for you. I think it's an interesting one. It comes from Eli Slovin, who, those of you that are online on Twitter know Eli Slovin. He's a local kid who might be our best signing to the University of Massachusetts we've had in a long time. He comes from Amherst Regional High School. He's going to be joining us at UMass as a freshman next year. He asked Coach Karsich, he's got a younger sister who's a sophomore starting crew this past fall. And Eli says, I don't know if she's any good, but she does it. She's one of the only people that he knows that does it. Where are the hotbeds for crew, not only maybe in this country, but internationally? Where are those? You talked about recruiting more broadly, Eric. Where are those hotbeds for rowing across this the world?
It's similar to Ange. It is a growing sport. We have over 90 Division I programs in the United States to support that. Boston is a major hub, has always been a major hub of rowing. The history in Philadelphia on the Schuylkill River, a huge hub of rowing. Connecticut has been producing some of the high school national championships down in Greenwich, down in Norwalk. That area is a hotbed of rowing right now. Washington, D.C., on the Potomac River, another huge population of rowers. And on the West Coast, the Seattle area and in the Bay Area are the probably the largest populations on the West Coast. Internationally, the U.S. schools are recruiting a lot from Australia. I spent 2 weeks down in Australia, post-fire, pre-COVID-19, that little window of time. I was down in Australia for a couple of weeks. New Zealand, definitely a lot of rowers from New Zealand. And then over in England, down in London, is a huge population. Rowing is very popular. But really all over Europe, you'll find talent. I'm talking to a couple Serbian kids right now, an Irish athlete. So it is really all over the international countries. That's really where it is across the U.S.
Sure. This next question, Carv, is for you, and it's such an appropriate question because I think this is one of your greatest strengths is what's your favorite part of preparing for an upcoming game?
Good one.
Well, as a coach, our job is to prepare the players. It's everything that goes into that. I guess probably the pre-scout. I think it's the coach versus coach part of the game. And when you play you coach in the same league now for a number of years, you realize it's a checker game. Like, what are they going to do? What are we going to do? So that's probably it. And then through the course of the week, trying to implement practices so the players are prepared for whatever strategy you're trying to use. And I think that's probably the part that's less mundane. Not that I feel like my job is mundane at all, but it's probably that gives you that little extra energy to try to find a way to out-compete your opponent.
Yeah. And same question for you. What do you enjoy about prepping for your next opponent?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, the scout week and just implementing that and just the intricacies of the game and, the film and everything that goes into it. And it's just so fun. It's a really fun component of that. But also, we take a lot of pride too in our film post-game review as well. Just really dissecting, the positives and things that we need to improve on. I'd say we probably spend more time doing that than maybe we do on the scout, and just really building those players' confidence in all the work that they put in leading up to it to show them that their hard work and efforts are paying off in competition or even in practice, because we break a lot of our practices down to review with players. I think just seeing them grow and build that confidence over that time period is a really rewarding piece for me.
I've got another, you guys have each a little bit alluded to this, just how our coach, this actually comes from a rowing alum, one of my favorite ones from the last few years, Sam Collefson, who was just a fantastic student athlete for us. How are coaches handling remote training? And I want to ask you, we now cannot have countable activity, no more care logs. The NCAA came out with that interpretation in the last week. So we have to be very careful. Obviously, we want our kids continue to train. Just maybe 10 seconds from each of you, just what are the one or two things that you want our student athletes to think about? If there's a point you want to hit home about training right now, and you all are, Carvey, you just ended a season, Eric and you guys were just getting into the throes of yours, but right now, if you want them over the next month or two to be thinking about one or two things, what is that? Ange, I'll start with you.
I think it's got to be getting creative with what type of tools or resources they're using. They might not have weights. We spend all this time building up our strength. So it's really being creative, whether it's, gallons of milk or sandbags or something, just being really creative to maintain their level of strength.
Eric?
I think control the controllables. Right now, they have the ability to wake up every day and get on the erg and work out. They absolutely have total autonomy over that action. Their attitude, they can control their attitude and their positivity. They can also control their effort. No matter if you're tall, small, huge lungs, small lungs, you can control your effort. And lastly, you have the ability to hold each other accountable. And so those 4 talking points, we just had our team meeting the other day. We hit on those 4 talking points, and we stress them, and we will continue to stress them moving forward.
I love it. Carv, I know you guys had a long season and had to get off their legs for a couple weeks. Now as they get into this is a time where we get better as a hockey program. I know we've had some real strides in strength and conditioning, and bringing in a new strength coach this spring as Clayton Curvin's left us. What are the one or two things that you're telling your guys?
To me, it's about standards and communication. If you don't have really high standards in your program, I'd be really nervous about my players being off on their own. But if you've done a good job and they know what expectations are, and then if there's certain kids who you think aren't quite reaching those, communication's important. That was a big part of last week of postseason interviews is certain kid, hey, you got to get stronger. It's bottom line. So as long as the standards of the players understand what you expect and you're communicating to the kids who you need more from, then again, you know the character of your players and they'll find ways to get.
Good. All right, I want to finish. We've been wrapping here for about 45 minutes. I appreciate your time. I know you all have busy days ahead of you. I want to just on a personal note talk through. I want you to tell everybody what you've been doing the last 3 or 4 weeks. You're all juggling different family dynamics, and I know a couple of you are homeschooling your children at the moment and gone from coach to teacher in a full-time role. Talk about what this new normal has meant for you, and I want you in your comments to give me one recommendation. It could be a book or it could be a show that you've engaged in over the last 30 days as a recommendation for our fan base. Eric, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, you're hitting me. I have a 9-month-old, actually 10-month-old now, girl who's here at the house, and almost a 3-year-old boy in Wilder. So Violet and Wilder, they're home. My wife consults from home, and so she's used to the mayhem. For me, it's totally different and unique, and we're trying to balance. Obviously, our care for our kids is totally different, so we're kind of taking ownership of that. I don't have to work through any homeschooling, really. I mean, we're sort of doing that, but just like you, Ryan, it's are they fed? Are they napping? Are they clean? Or as clean as they can be? My son loves driving his tractor in the backyard. He got a little battery-powered tractor. He does that for hours. But it's really the new norm. We took a snow globe, shook it up, and all the snow is just settling down. I'm kind of trying to figure out how to balance work life here at the house. And it's a challenge, but my wife is amazing, and we're working through it right now. To be honest, I'm more into the soothing Netflix right now. How I Met Your Mother. I'm kind of binge watching that a little bit. It's kind of relaxing at nighttime. It's a known commodity. I don't have to think that much. Balance that with my share of the news every single day. So that's what my life is.
All right, and you've escaped to Maine at the moment. What's your last? I know you've got your hands full. What's your last 3 or 4 weeks look like?
There's just no norm. We try to make it norm, but it's literally day to day, making a schedule, mapping everything out. We have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. The 3-year-old was actually the first one to start virtual online learning. So she's has 2 half-hour sessions a day with story time and then implementing the 2 others. And my husband's a college soccer coach. He's the Amherst College men's soccer coach. And so he's in meetings the same way I am, and just really having to work together. So we map out every night what the kids have to do, but then 2 to 3 hour chunks of who's responsible during that time. And then we alternate all day long, just so that we can have, be able to get our work done. And it's been pretty wild. And obviously I want to, give a shout out to healthcare workers that are doing amazing things out there. But the second group of people are teachers and what they do. I could never do what they do. I mean, the level of patience and structure that they provide for the kids, and, just all the credit to them, because it's a really tough job to do this homeschooling. But I've been sleeping well at night because I've been watching the Jimmy Fallon show online every night. And he's doing his show from home, and he's got 2 young kids, and they just take the show over. The kids do. And he's really spreading a lot of positive news out there. So that's been something that gives me a chuckle every night before I go to bed. So I'd highly recommend that.
That's perfect. That was good. And your shout out to certainly healthcare workers and frontline workers and those working at supermarkets and things that are essential to us as a country. But there's no doubt, I think everybody's gained an appreciation for teachers. If we've come out of this thing, and I know parents have for certain, have gained an appreciation. So I'm glad you shouted out those groups. Certainly want to make sure we highlight their positive contributions, especially during this tough time. Carv, you've got 3 at home, and you've been able to, I know you told me the other day that you were doing some teaching with your children as well. What's this last month meant for you at home?
Busy. Like I expected to be. I'm not the least bit bored, which like you've heard that from the other coaches. What was very telling to me was 4 days after our season was canceled, I saw a family friend, and he's like, "My God, you look rested." Like, 4 days. That's all it took. Sleeping, and I'm a terrible sleeper, and that's the upside of this is I'm actually sleeping normal routine, which is very nice. We have a 7-year-old boy who, he's a boy, and it's almost you got to wrestle him, get him down a couple times a day to do some math and reading. And once me and my wife will go recess time, boom, get out, sprint around the house a few times. My daughters are tremendous; they're really good students, and so they go do their thing. We don't have to worry about them. But so many Zoom meetings, which has been great to keep this all connected. So plenty busy. I'm in the middle of hiring. I've got a couple hiring positions that I got to deal with. So lots to do. For me, the movie Green Book, I hadn't seen that. I saw that. I really enjoyed that. And then my wife and I are getting entrenched in Homeland. I know that's that's an older series, but one we wanted to get into. So that's the one we shut down at night watching Homeland.
That's good. It's funny you say that. Erica, my wife, has seen Homeland. I had never seen it, and we just started it last night. And we watched the first 2 episodes, and it was about. I was dozing. It was great, but I was ready to go at 10:15, and then and she was like, "You want to watch the third one?" I was like, "No, I can't swing it." But what a great show! I'm excited to get into that as well. I hadn't had the opportunity to see it before now. So you guys have been great. We've pounded it for over 50 minutes here. Coffee, it's time for me to get another cup. I know. Usually I tell everybody that doesn't necessarily know the sport of rowing, Eric, I say that you have more coffee before 8 a.m. than probably anybody. You are usually on the water by 6 a.m. and I know you got a big thermos. I've been out on the water with you a couple times. You got a big thermos of coffee, and you probably drink more than anybody does. But Dunkin' Donuts, want to thank them for our sponsorship. They've been awesome. Join us next week. We've got 3 coaches from all 3 different seasons. We've got Jason Doyak, our women's soccer coach, Matt McCall, men's basketball, and Matt Reynolds, our baseball coach, are going to join us next week. Guys, thank you. You guys did an amazing job this week. Really took it to another level. No surprise with the 3 of you. Really pleased with how this one came out. Appreciate your thoughts. And stay sane at home. Stay safe. Can't wait to see you guys in the flesh hopefully sometime soon, okay?
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, guys, this has been our second installment of Coffee with Coaches. Join us again next week. Thanks for staying safe and cheering on our Minutemen and Minutewomen as you do every day. Go UMass. Thank you.